Parker's fantastic Substack, The Present Age. That again is The Present Age. It's at readtpa.com. And Parker's piece is they're literally angry at Superman for being nice. How James Gunn's comments about, quote, basic human kindness triggered a predictable right-wing media meltdown. You can't make this shit up, folks. And I'm so glad Parker wrote about it because I just got tickets to go see Superman Friday night, IMAX. It's sold out on Thursday night. I'm bringing my kids and my parents are visiting. I can't wait for it. We'll talk about Superman in a second. But Parker, thanks for joining at the last second. For those who don't know, because they're not masochists like you and me and swim in the friggin' recesses of the right-wing swamp and are normal humans, please explain this controversy.
Oh, uh, thanks for having me also. So the controversy basically goes like this. James Gunn gave an interview where he described Superman as an immigrant story about basic human kindness, which is literally what Superman has always been about. Conservative media immediately branded the film super woke, with Fox News' Jesse Waters suggesting Superman's cape should read MS-13.
Wow.
They're essentially mad that Superman represents the exact values he's had since 1938.
Where he was, can you tell him who created Superman?
Yeah, he was created by the children of Jewish refugees, uh, which is kind of very, very cool, very interesting, and has definitely shaped his story along the way.
Yeah, and also, it's Superman also fought fascists and Nazis, and then James Gunn doubled down to his credit on this narrative of not just Superman leading with kindness, but Superman being an immigrant, and then his brother Sean Gunn, a good guy. Can you tell us what Sean said, if you know?
Yeah, so Sean jumped in there. Let me pull up his exact quote. He said, "Superman is an immigrant. Yes, the people that we support in this country are immigrants, and if you don't like that, you're not American."
And
That's
and,
just
and they lost their mind.
Yeah. Sean Gunn is fantastic. I loved following him when I was on Twitter. He was always great. But yeah, I'm glad that he spoke up where maybe James had to kind of play nice.
And you know, hey, Kamau Bell's there. Thanks, Kamau. I'd love to have you come on if you're watching in a couple of minutes as well, if you're up for it. But Parker, your piece was fantastic. It's very thorough, and the reason why, I always want an excuse to talk about Superman, but I think just lean back for a second. I think that this is why it's so important. You know, Don gave us a perfect segue. How some of these stories that we may laugh at, right? Some of these memes, some of these talking points, we'll say, "Oh, the right wing's so silly and dumb." But it becomes radicalized into conspiracy theories that then becomes very pivotal to political talking points that in part radicalize men in particular, but not exclusively, and then also radicalize individuals to commit violence. And furthermore, as Andrew Breitbart, who was the mentor to Steve Bannon, said, I think he was on point, politics is downstream from culture. So what right wing does very deliberately, which the left, or rather I should say Democrats, have forgotten about, is they take issues like Star Wars. There's a Black Jedi, or they take stuff like Black Little Mermaid, or a different colored M&Ms, and we might laugh about it, but they use it as part of their larger culture war strategy to go against the woke, transgender people of color, immigrants, and they use it to attack Democrats, which then leads to horrific policies where centrist Democrats throw our communities under the bus, sign up with them when it comes to the Lake and Riley Act, sign up with them when it comes to going against transgender communities. And we sit there and go, how did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're at this point where even suggesting people should be kind to each other is seen as a political attack. And I think the timing on this matters as well, with mass deportations happening, Gunn calling Superman an immigrant story kind of hits differently than if it just happened at a random time during Trump's first term, say. Which during Trump's first term, I believe that's when conservatives got James Gunn fired from Marvel,
Yep.
which kind of ended up with, that's how he ended up directing the Superman movie. So look at that.
I'm so glad you brought that up because people forget, and I had already forgotten that because you and I actually have talked about that, how corporate institutions, and in that case it was Disney,
Hmm.
bent the knee to a very deliberate, intentionally malicious, manufactured hit job on James Gunn for tweets from God knows when that he had apologized for. And then Disney, just like every establishment and institution that we've seen, folks, CBS, CNN, Fox, go down the list, bent the knee to this bad faith right wing outrage machine and kicked out James Gunn. And that's why he went to DC.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. And, the sad thing about this is what it resulted in James Gunn posting on Twitter less and posting only professional updates and not offering his opinion on things, which those are the things that made Twitter cool back in the day. That you could see some celebrities' thoughts on politics or culture or what have you. But then with this, right wing backlash, it just sort of got to the point where suddenly you have people like James Gunn who feel like they can't speak out on social media anymore, who can't voice their opinions on things, and end up just kind of keeping it to themselves. Which, I mean, that's part of the goal in these sorts of
Yep.
outrage campaigns. It's to silence people. This is not about one movie. It's about how the right wing media machine manufactures controversies. They took Gunn's comments, stripped him of context, added inflammatory framing, and turned be nice to people into a culture war battle. The same playbook gets used over and over. We saw it with Barbie, we saw it
Yep.
with Disney, and we see it with Superman. And in some of those cases, in the case of Disney, for instance, conservative backlash to Disney and the very public fights that they would have with the state of Florida and stuff like that, has resulted in you can read story after story of Disney s- and going into its projects and taking out things that were meant to be representative of queer people and stuff like
Well,
that.
Elio, tell him about what happened to Elio.
Yeah, that was basically in that case. Uh, Pixar stepped in because they thought Disney was going to step in, and the whole thing turned into a complete mess. And they ended up stripping out queer context. They ended up it bounced around to different directors. It was a whole ordeal, and it was because they didn't want to come off as too woke. But I haven't seen that one yet, but from what I'm seeing from people, they're saying like it's Pixar, but it's missing something. It's
I
like
saw with
it.
my kid. It's
Yeah,
good, but it's missing a spark. And then
yeah,
when I went and read the Hollywood Reporter, I'm like, wow. The co-director was one of the co-directors of Coco,
hmm,
who is a Latino queer man. And there were like small, subtle things there that this kid, Elio, might actually be queer. And a lot of the animators said, oh, that's what gave it a spark. And they just completely removed it, gutted it to placate a right-wing base. They
yeah,
gutted Acolyte, the Star Wars show, right?
hmm,
They just complete Star Wars. I think the worst Star Wars movie was the last one, Rise of Skywalker, where they responded to the introduction of an Asian character. They completely neutralized John Boyega's character, gave fan service. So we see, folks, how if people like James Gunn, who is now the architect of the DC universe for Warner Brothers, has been silenced, and they're coming after Superman. Me, Parker, and Kamau, like, what hope do we have? Kamau probably, he's much more powerful than us. But what hope do you and me have and people who are Muslim, brown, immigrants, transgender communities? It's about intimidation. But I ask you, like, if this is happening to Gunn and Disney doesn't have
yeah,
guns back,
yeah, yeah. When that happened to him, yeah, they didn't have his back and they threw him under the bus. I think that it's scary because any of these campaigns could come out and target you or target me or target anyone and essentially crush them. Just and that's why I don't feel comfortable posting on Twitter anymore. It's not so much, oh, there are terrible things, and oh, I'm going to see opinions I disagree with, because of course I'm going to see opinions I disagree with. That's every day, that's everywhere. But the reason I don't post on Twitter anymore is because it's become this haven for harassers. You've got accounts like Libs of TikTok that basically go around looking for marginalized people they can pick on. And I don't want to spend I'm 39 years old. I don't need to spend my days, getting tagged in things and having to deal with things like it's grade school or high school.
Parker, you're a kid. You're only 39.
Only
Look at me. Come
39.
on. I hope you don't mind. I added Kamau first time. Kamau joined us. Kamau, you wanted to get in here. Do you agree with us? We think Parker and me will be thrown under the bus, but you have powerful friends. You'll survive if they come after you.
That's why I live in Oakland, so I don't have to worry about them coming after me. They don't come to Oakland. I live in the bubble. We built a bubble here in the Bay Area, so they don't come after me. I'm
I'm
not
from
worried
the
about it.
East Bay. I'm from the East Bay, and I'm proud to say that well, I'm happily married for 13 years, but my lady friend before that took me to Kamau Bell End Racism. He had a End Racism segment in San Francisco. That's where I first saw Kamau before he became a big deal. So I'm from Fremont, and you're wise at living in Berkeley. But you jumped into this conversation that I was having with Parker about how the right wing weaponizes pop culture, and now they're attacking Superman. Superman, literally an undocumented immigrant, some would call an alien who landed on Earth and decided to use his superpowers to literally help the marginalized and fight against Lex Luthor, a billionaire. And I'm sitting there thinking, Parker and Kamau, have you never read Superman? Like, how can you be pissed off about this? Kamau, your take. I yield the floor to you.
Well, first of all, I'm Parker. I'm sorry to interrupt. You're doing the
No,
Lord's work as always,
by
and I'm a big fan.
by all
Whatnot, you're
means.
fine. But Parker, you're my hero, and I get in trouble for things I post. I'm like, but Parker said it, so
I
like,
said, see, no, it's just no one pays attention to me. That's how
no,
it works. It's
well, I had somebody tell me something I posted. I was like, but I was anyway. So thank you for doing your work, and thank you for
thanks.
educating me and educating all of us. And I didn't know the Elio thing. I took my family to it, and we all walked out sort of like, huh, okay, like there was something like that was not there, and to find out that like, oh yeah, they cut something from it because it felt a little bit lifeless, and I like it, and my family's a big Pixar fan, but it did not have the charm of like other Pixar films. So I'm glad to know that what that was and it's funny because Pixar is based in Emeryville, which is in the blue bubble of the East Bay, so they have no reason or right to be making things less woke. You're in the woke district, you're in the woke bubble, so. Um, I think as far as Superman goes, I think this is just another idea of the right will turn anything into their enemy if they think it can be useful to them. Because this is just a Superman movie, everybody. It is not more than that. Like, no offense to my Superman fans out there, but he sucks as a superhero.
Oh, whoa,
Oh,
He sucks.
whoa,
He sucks. He sucks.
whoa.
Uh, so I'm not saying I like here's the thing. I'm a Christopher Reeve Superman guy. Like that was my favorite Superman movie. I still love Christopher Reeve Superman. I Henry Cavill came close, but the movie wasn't as great. But I think that like the right is showing you they put their finger in the air and they feel like which way is the wind blowing, and they felt like they could love a Superman movie. It's about a strong, powerful white guy who's in charge of everybody. Like that could be your avatar and your hero. And Superman's never been about oppression or about he's actually I compare Superman when I say to white people, use your white privilege like Clark Kent turns into Superman. So like it's like the idea being that like but he's also just a superhero movie. It is not that serious. It is what is it? The DC is trying to sell lunchboxes and and toys. It is not that serious. But the right will have us argue about things that are not that serious to distract us from things that are way more serious. And I think that that's the ultimate thing here. Every year we argue about what is it about Christmas is under attack. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Christmas has never been under attack.
No.
Every woke city has Christmas decorations. Every woke city has Christmas parade. But again, it's the right sort of like figuring out how do we distract people from the fact that our message is bad and toxic.
Which on that point, which that's a great point because that's exactly what's happening. On that point, it is kind of interesting that a week after they passed their big beautiful bill, they passed their budget. They need to have this distraction. There's this
Right.
because people don't like the bill. People are outraged about it. If this was something that they were really happy with and celebrating, there would be nonstop focus on that. They wouldn't have to be looking for comments about Superman to get upset about. And these things pop up all the time. When I was writing this piece today, I looked it up and in October of 2021, I wrote, what are we outraged about today? bisexual Superman who has slightly different slogan edition. And they were upset because in the Superman Son of Kal-El book, which takes place in the aftermath of DC's Future State event, Superman's son, John Kent, comes out as bisexual, and he also said he stands for truth, justice, and not the American way. But he said something other than the American way, and the right freaked out about it. And this is just something they do. It's
Yeah.
they did. Remember when
I'm
they ranted about Dr. Seuss for like a week and a half?
I think I'm going to respond to Kamau's blasphemy about Superman in a second, but I do think, I think it's a distraction and also the main
Spider-Man.
driver, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a distraction precisely for what you said, because they don't have any ideas. The ideas belong to the billionaires and the racists, but they realize it's the grievance, the anger. The culture, folks, drives the white supremacy, right? The twin sins are white supremacy and greed, racism and capitalism combined together. The culture war provides them permanent ammunition and red meat for their radicalized base to be angry about something, right? I'm going to paraphrase that famous Marlon Brando quote from the Wild Ones. Someone asked him, well, what are you angry? What are you rebelling against? He goes, what you got? And the right wing says, what are you enraged about? Well, let me give you a 24/7 intravenous shot. You're going to be pissed out about Teletubbies. We're old enough to remember, the Teletubbies. Parker might be too young.
I remember it.
Teletubbies, Bud Light, Arby's.
Wait about this. Less sexy green M&M.
We talked about that. Tucker Carlson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the M&M. And what it drives is, and I think with Superman in particular, I'm really curious how this plays out, because Superman right now is tracking to be, like Kamau said, a massive movie. The reviews came out very good. Fundamentally, what Superman is about is kindness and an alien who takes on a billionaire. And that, folks, is a merger of pop culture with modern day reality, where the majority is rising up for people like Mamdani to take on the billionaires and the 1% who just passed this bill. And furthermore, because James Gunn, I think, probably learned from his lesson of getting like blacklisted by Disney, he goes, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm the head of like Warner Brothers Creative. He's gone 10 toes down and said, this is an immigrant story. And because the central ethos of MAGA is we have to make America white again, they're completely and deliberately misreading Superman and feeding it to their base. And I'm very curious if you think this attack on Superman for being an immigrant who literally takes on a billionaire, and I give it to you and Kamau and Parker, will this one work, or do we see a flip where the war on the woke is slightly receding and people say, F you, I'm done?
I mean, maybe. As you were listing examples, I thought back to my favorite one, which is in 2012. Right as The Dark Knight Rises was about to come out, Rush Limbaugh went on a rant about how the villain in the movie Bane, that sounds like Bain Capital, which that sounds like Mitt Romney. So it was he thought that they created a character named Bane specifically to take a dig at Mitt Romney, ignoring that character's been around for a long time. But anyway, that's my favorite example. I honestly, I think most people see this for what it is. I think what it provides conservatives, though, what it gives the right, is a way to stay on what's trending. Because this Superman movie, like you said, it's going to make $1 billion, and it's people who have content out there about Superman in the coming days are likely to get some clicks and get some views and expand their reach. And so even if those of us who know better know that this is all disingenuous, this sort of outrage content does great on YouTube, and that's where places like the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro burning Barbie dolls, to protest the Barbie movie, it's easy to laugh at him for that. But at the same time, I mean, the Daily Wire is bigger now than it was when Barbie came out 2 years ago. I think that, it's really smart how these political commentators are able to connect to culture. And I think that that's something that the left could learn from. They could, not with outrage, but but by drawing parallels. Draw that parallel to, yeah, Superman's an immigrant, and we should talk about this because this is really cool. Like the reverse of it. To
And he takes
also
on a
say,
billionaire. He takes
yeah,
on an
he
even
takes on a
billionaire and
billionaire.
wins.
Yeah, exactly.
But Kamau, let's actually support the billionaires and take out Mamdani instead.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Again, that's why I live in Oakland. I live in places where you can see Black Panthers walk down the street to remind you of what you should be doing. But all I would say was this: I think that when the movie's a hit, which it sounds like to be a hit, this is what I've learned from the right. They will also piece it apart and take the parts that they think feeds their narrative and take and make it and then make those their own. I remember I was in an airport not that long ago, and I saw a guy wearing a T-shirt clearly from Cobra Kai, and the T-shirt said "No Mercy." I was like, I think that's the wrong lesson from the Karate Kid. I'm pretty sure Mr. Miyagi wasn't teaching that those were the bad guys. And it just shows you that like even the people who
Yeah.
market these things make the t-shirt they know is the wrong lesson because they want everybody to buy the t-shirt. And so I'm sure that when these things, first of all, everybody, you can walk around anything and see somebody wearing a Superman t-shirt, and the products from this thing are going to be adopted by the right in the ways that they want to adopt them because they like popular stuff. It's just so I think we have to understand that like none of this has to make sense. And the only thing I would say to Parker about the Daily Wire thing, the Daily Wire is great at all culture except making their own.
Yeah,
Mm.
Like
that's where they fail.
they
That
can't
that
make a
is.
TV show, they can't make a movie that anybody cares about. Not even
Mhm.
their own side cares about. They made a cartoon missed with Adam Carolla. They
Yeah.
made
It was
they
terrible.
made a movie about lady something or other. I don't know what it was. And they do not know how to create their own culture. All they do is they take the culture that the left creates. Because let's be clear, like you said, Superman was made by two Jews who were the children of immigrants who, and I want to say this part because I put in the comments,
Mhm.
weren't paid fairly for the multi-billion-dollar product that they created.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this. And the X-Men were created as a way to talk about civil rights. All this, the people who made the artists who made the superheroes back in the day were the geeky people who couldn't win, who weren't winning in life, and created avatars of themselves to be the winners, which is why that culture generally is skewed to the left. And I want to shout out a comic book commentator who's on YouTube. I think he's on Substack too. Comic Tropes does a great job of explaining
Oh yeah.
comic books. I think his name Chris. I think his name. He's from out of Seattle, and he does a great job of explaining where all this stuff comes from. Because it's not like this stuff is lefty. It's literally created by people on the left generally because it is avatars because these are all avatars of how to fight oppression.
You
You
know,
don't need
that
a
was
superhero if
fantastic.
you're powerful.
Fantastic point. I'll give it to you, Parker, in a second. But as a grown man who still reads comic books, yes, I have children, and I actually am married to a real life human woman for the past 13 years. Comic books and pop culture in particular are created by those who are woke. And they've always been very subversive. They've always been anti-fascist. They've always uplifted the freaks and the geeks, right? And what's really a point that Kamau made that's really on point. I want to give people two examples of how the right wing perverts and co-ops culture that was not created for them. I give you The Matrix, created by two transgender women, the Wachowski. They started off as Wachowski brothers, and the Wachowski sisters, who had a very clear ideology and intention, and now red pilled has been usurped and co-opted and stolen by MAGA, and also Palantir, this evil company, co-created by Peter Thiel. Folks, for those who don't know, Palantir, they get this multi-million-dollar budget by Donald Trump to create a surveillance state in America. Palantir, for those who read Lord of the Rings or see the movies, is literally the sphere that is used to surveil on Middle Earth. And Peter Thiel is like, let me name my company Palantir, because I can't tell the difference between a good guy and bad guy. And Parker, I want to ask you about this, but I do think, what Kamau said is they can't create culture. And sometimes they miss culture. I don't know if you saw this. Donald Trump or the incel freaks who have his White House account posted a photo of Donald Trump as a Sith Lord holding a red lightsaber, which
Yeah.
to me was there's cracks here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when they did that, I remember thinking, like, why would they do that? That's the bad guys, But I think that what this is what happens when your entire media model, on the right, as Kamau said, when it requires manufactured outrage. It's the outrage that propels these right-wing outlets, Daily Wire, Outkick, all of these groups, and they can't create anything on their own. And I think it's important to remember that. The reason that there aren't more conservative, successful conservative pieces of culture is because there are just not that many good pieces of conservative culture. There's plenty that exists, and there is some that's good, but it's this call for it to be like everything needs to be balanced. We need to have a diversity of thought, like that sort of thing, where basically what they want is affirmative action for conservatives when it comes to what we accept in culture. And right now, given that they have the White House and they have control of Congress, they're using the power of the state to try to enforce some of this. You see this with Trump taking over the Kennedy Center and things like that. I think that there's a real desperation on the right to try to control culture.
If culture wasn't important, he wouldn't try to take over the Kennedy Center. If culture was important, Viktor Orban wouldn't try to consolidate power by not only stripping the judiciary of its independence and going after the Fourth Estate, but what he also did was neutralize the culture and put in yes men and yes women. So they understand the power of culture. They understand the power of storytelling. But I do believe it's the rest of us, the majority, who are the creators of the pop culture that resonates with people. And Kamau, I've told Parker I only keep her for 30. So Kamau, I want to ask you this question. I want to share something with you all and why I hope Superman is a pivot. This is my hope, folks. Because if Superman makes a lot of money, I don't get a dollar bill from Warner Brothers. I don't care. But Superman in particular, James Gunn has put behind his creative ideological stamp behind his character, saying this is about kindness, empathy, uplifting the marginalized, and it's an immigrant story. He went 10 toes down. His brother went 20 toes down. If Superman is the big global blockbuster, Superman, what pop culture represents, what it reflects, and what it also shapes, I think might be a crack in the cruelty that is the engine of white supremacy and Trumpism. And what I could tell you, come on, you know this better than I do because you're in the industry. Folks, I'm getting my first corporate speaking gig in 6 months in 2 weeks because my speaking agency said that any person of color or a woman, a lot of these universities and corporations look at them and think, by virtue of our existence, not even by the content, oh, it'll be DI. And what Parker was saying, we can't do both sides. And so now we have my first corporate speech in a law firm, and the lady is a Black woman who heard me speak, and she's like, I'm going to bring you on. I don't care. For South Asian Awareness Month. I'm like, I didn't even know there was a South Asian Awareness Month. But hey, but Kamau, you're in the industry, and all my friends are saying, the retrenchment by Disney and all these other companies to bend the knee to these bad faith actors, to move the Overton window to the right, to do affirmative action for conservatives. As Parker and I have talked about it all the time, the New York Times, CNN, it's always affirmative action for white conservatives. How has it been for you to be authentic to your true self, to be, dare I say, woke, a Black man from East Bay, and say, F y'all, I'm going to continue on my path?
I'm making less money.
That's
Me.
That's the truth. That's true.
I mean, I'd like to put a sharper pin on it, but the kind of programming that I was known for at CNN doesn't really exist anymore. It doesn't exist on CNN. It doesn't exist. I have a lot of good friends at CNN. My ex-boss is still there. I think if it was up to her, she'd bring me back right away, but it's up to lots of people over her. And I think the idea being that the kind of programming that you see on those networks now of any programming has really become sort of like relax programming. Like, let's watch this famous person enjoy food in this country under no threat and also not taking a deep dive into the history of this country, which is fine. We all like that, but it's like we've moved away from let's get into the real conversations. And so one of the reasons I'm on Substack is because I got to go someplace where I can be where I want to be and where I can actually, the audience can find me and we can all do this together. And this is my space to work it out, to figure out what happens next. Because it's like, I have learned that I can't depend on show business anymore. I can't, I'm still pitching projects and working on things, but I'm also on Substack talking to you all. And I'm also hosting the ACLU's podcast. And I'm also doing stand-up comedy again because I can control what I say on stage. So it has made me have to take my career back into my own hands and not trust that, because it's funny, you keep saying you're in the industry, and it's like, I'm like, am I? I mean, I know I am, but am I? I mean, I am, but am I?
Well, it's how you keep your voice pure, right? You go independent. It's happened to my friend, happened to Mehdi Hassan. I just talked to Jim Acosta.
Yeah, Jim
And
Acosta was
folks,
on here, and he was more entrenched in CNN than I was by far. And but like, and he had to, and he left. So I think like that's what I understand. I can't even take it personally. If people like Jim Acosta have to leave, if people like Don Lemon, whatever you think of him, I believe they were like, we're going to use us as a reason to force you out of here. This thing that we're
yep,
mad at you about. If those people who are making, and I don't know about Jim Acosta, but Don Lemon was making a lot more money than me. If they don't want that guy, I can't take it personally about me. This is about a whole. We don't even want people who look like this on to scare our potential viewers.
that's exactly it, folks. So don't hear it from me, hear it from Kamal. I was also on CNN for a year, which is fine. I had a good reputation. The same with you. Great relationship with all those folks. COVID happened. They stored up money for the medical experts, got rid of all the progressive voices, kept Scott Jennings, and just gave him a bump. And me, Parker, and Kamau can never go the Jake Tapper route. Children, never tapper yourself. If there's a fork in the road, the non-tapper route or the tapper route, take the non-tapper route. You'll make a little bit less money, but you'll keep your integrity. I'm going to give the final word to you and Parker. First Parker, and then you come out to Tim to promote yourself. But if I may, just indulge me for a minute, I'll make my case for Superman, but I'll also take in Kamau's criticism. Superman, why he was the first big superhero character, Action Comics, why he has endured is because of what he represents. That symbol, hope, kindness, decency, that an alien, an undocumented immigrant, can land in America where there's so much cruelty, but there's also kindness as well. Where my dad came in this country in 1966 and he was almost deported because the immigration officer looked at him and said, "You Arabs only come here to F American girls." My father's not an Arab and he was not effing American girls. But then there was another lawyer, a white man, who said, "I'm sorry what happened to you. I'll work for you pro bono." And then my father got fast tracked to citizenship, right? The kindness and the cruelty. There's a Lex Luthor, but there's always a Ma and Pa Kent who took this undocumented immigrant, right? And then Superman, the world's most powerful being, if he wanted to be like Elon Musk or Donald Trump, could crush us in an instant, could rule over us. Instead, acts like a bumbling, humble Midwestern farm boy, Clark Kent, who is a reporter and a damn good reporter who upholds the fourth estate and uses all of his superpowers to help all of life. And Superman, as Kamau said, because it's all about who wields the story, has been used and abused as an agent of empire, as an agent of American jingoism, as an agent of American imperialism. And as Parker said, once the writers moved away from that in the past 5 years, the right wing fell apart. Because he didn't say truth, justice in the American way. He said truth, justice, and he changed it. He said, he renounced his citizenship. So now Superman belongs to all the people, which is why I think in this moment, an undocumented immigrant who leads with kindness and empathy, making $1 billion in the box office, as we're ruled by freaking eugenicist, racist, billionaires who are dumb as F and white supremacists, I think will be a major pop cultural punch, a pow to fascists. And now I yield the floor to you, Parker, and Kamau for the final, anything you want to say, final words, and shamelessly promote yourself.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me, for one. But yeah, I wrote a piece about this today. Please go check it out over at my Substack. It's called The Present Age. And yeah, just do that. My subscriber numbers have been kind of iffy lately, so I could use some more if you can check it
Marginalized
out.
communities and children of immigrants are terrible at self-promotion. So let me just do this for you.
Thank you.
Parker
Okay.
Molloy is an indispensable source of independent journalism. He is on it when it comes to the right wing, when it comes to manufactured crises, when it comes to pop culture and how it intersects with media and also politics. The Present Age is your Substack. It's readtpa.com. The article is they're literally angry at Superman for being nice. And then she chronicles not just this latest manufactured outrage, but she talks about how they created it and mainstreamed it and what Superman actually represents. And she's also on Blue Sky on Twitter. And become a paid subscriber, folks, for Parker Molloy Substack. Kamau, do better, or else I'll have to come in. Shamelessly promote yourself and I'll give you the final word.
Don't follow me, follow Parker. So if you're going to follow me, just subscribe to Parker, and then you can come around to me later because I would like to. Parker should be.
You still failed. You had a
I know.
simple assignment and you still failed.
I did. Okay, so all I'll say is this: if the end of the Superman movie is Superman lasering off Lex Luthor's human head, so we never have to deal with him again, then I'm a fan of Superman. But if he, but if he once again just puts him in prison and Lex escapes, I got a problem. Anyway, my name is W. Kamau Bell. My Substack is called Who's With Me. The latest Substack I wrote, which came out last Friday, is about I don't want billionaires moving into my neighborhood or marrying my daughter. It's actually saying billionaires should be classified as their own racial group because we would understand them better the way we understand racial groups if we understood billionaires as being a separate race of people. Someone like Oprah Winfrey, she's not a black woman. She's half black, half billionaire. She's mixed race. So I would say follow me on Substack. Who's With Me? It's free, or you can throw me money because I have 3 daughters, and I have 3 daughters.
Billionaires are their own class. If you don't believe Kamau and me, Oprah was one of the 200 people who was at Jeff Bezos' $50 million wedding in Venice. To quote George Carlin, it's a big club and you ain't in it. And folks, I got 3 kids. Some good news I'll share with all of you. I was going to post it if you don't mind keeping me for 30 seconds. My daughter Nuseba is turning 9 in a couple of days, and we just found out yesterday she's a stage 4 cancer survivor, had a full liver transplant, and just yesterday her cancer doctor said she has officially become a cancer survivor, and so she has survived the 5-year milestone. She has moved past it, and knock on wood. And the reason why she survived was Sean Zahir, an anonymous donor at the time, stepped up to provide a piece of his liver to a girl he never met. So consider being a liver donor, consider being giving blood transfusions, consider giving your blood. But Nuseba is turning 9, and we just found out yesterday she is now officially a survivor, having passed the 5-year mark. And I too have 3 kids, 1 son, 2 daughters, and I'm a terrible capitalist like Parker and Kamau. I've kept everything for free. There are no paywalls on the left hook. So please subscribe, and if you can, give a few bucks to myself, Kamau, and Parker. We depend on the kindness of strangers like Blanche Dubois. But until then, be kind, be empathetic, help uplift your family members, your friends, and your communities, and don't be a fascist. Thanks, Kamau. Thanks, Parker. Take care, everyone.